Hey everybody, hotel industry expert Glenn Haussman here, and today we're going to be having an exciting panel talking about some of the opportunities and challenges ahead in the future for our incredible hospitality industry, mostly from the design side of the business. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. Fact of the matter is we had 10 great years. We all put systems into place. We all got comfortable. We all felt the ground beneath us was pretty darn solid, but things have changed. There's been a shifting sands under us. The industry is changing. We're going to be moving to a new world, and you need to be armed with the insight and information to help you deal with the challenges now and the opportunities for tomorrow. So today we got a great panel discussion with us. We got Mr. Gus Sarff. He's the principal CEO at GS Associates. And of course, we have Margaret McMahon, SVP Global Director with Wimberly Interiors, and the incredible Lawrence Chalfin. I like to call him Larry, President of Samuelson Furniture. Great to see all of you here today, and thanks for coming aboard. I think the best place to start might be let's start with you, Gus. I'm really curious as to what you're thinking about. What are the challenges that you're immediately dealing with here as we deal with this COVID-19 fallout?
Well, I'm going to start with where we were coming into in 2020. Pretty unprecedented levels of projects. So we had a full cast on our team. We have a broad spectrum of projects internationally and domestic. And, you know, with most people not really seeing this coming, as the virus unfolded, we kind of went down about 20% in our projects. And our biggest challenge right now is really facing the future with the uncertainties that are sitting out there. We have to align ourselves with what our clients' needs are and to kind of watch this economic downturn with the hotels. So what we're doing is trying to figure out, just like everybody else, what's going on with this virus, get some clarity on how long this is going to last, what the status is with the economic opening. The hotels right now are facing a tremendous focus on making sure that the guests are safe as they come in. So we're kind of waiting and trying to be a partner with our clients and our project team to see how we can get that done. Really getting guest confidence, I think, is the primary concern that we see right now. We've been really successful at keeping our team, keeping enough projects and fees coming in to keep the team so that we're prepared to service our clients when it happens.
All right. I think I'd love to know the secret sauce about keeping those fees coming in at this difficult time right now. But Margaret, I totally get what Gus is saying. There have been a lot of challenges out there. There's been this sense of uncertainty that's really made it difficult to move forward. But I've noticed as we're recording this interview towards the end of May, that there seems to be a sense of clarity coming through. There seems to be a sense of understanding. There seems to be kind of a little bit of the guide rails, what the future rules are going to be about. So how are you seeing the state of today? And how does that differ a little bit from what you were going through in your company just a few short weeks ago?
Well, you know, Glenn, I could be the queen of delusion. I've been talking to people over the last few days saying, I don't know.
That was the name of my college band, by the way, Queen of the Delusion.
I could be delusional, but I see a glimmer of hope and, you know, light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
And honestly, we're having different conversations. A couple of weeks ago, we didn't know what was going on. I did have a client call me the other day and say, I want a designer to get on a plane, you know, and I said that wasn't happening right now. And he said, but I've been traveling. I said, but you travel private. He goes, yeah, I know. But, you know, so clients are definitely getting, they're getting restless. Some clients are definitely getting restless. Our Asia clients want to know when we're going to be able to travel. And as we all know, listen, there are global constraints everywhere. So what we're trying to do is come up with a strategy where we can be extremely nimble, but at the same time have our key designers working on the projects. We've got to make sure that we've got the imprint that we're known for top design. And we're trying to figure out how to really bolster our teams in Asia. And how we're really going to be able to travel again. Because as I said to client the other night when he said, you know, you don't understand, 10 weeks from now, it's going to be the same as now. There isn't going to be a solution. I said, listen, you're talking to a gal who will get on a plane. As soon as Delta tells me that everything is safe and I can get on a plane, I trust them and I'm going to go.
Well, I got some news for you. Ed Bastian called me. He's the CEO of Delta just the other day. He said, Glenn, it's safe. Come on back. No problem.
Wait, he did? Of course he called you, Glenn. Of course he called you. Oh my God. I hope I get on your call list.
No,
But
anyway,
I
I wish I should be so lucky.
Yeah. But listen, we are all social creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in our business, we're all used to traveling pretty much nonstop. And that's really, we think that we can do all of this remotely, but we're now even feeling from our clients, well, you can't travel. How are we going to do this? And I think that the remote presentation has a life to it, but I think that we're definitely going to have to come up with other solutions as well.
Oh yeah, definite solutions. But I will say, Larry, you're nimble. You've come up with solutions, and I got to say, now that you've been home for a while, not having to go back and forth to China has done wonders for you. You look really well rested. I love that. But one of the cool things is you've been able to kind of get past some of these challenges, because the last few years you've been putting a real emphasis on putting manufacturing as much as possible back in your New Jersey home base, as opposed to depending as much on foreign countries way away from here, right?
Well, yes, to some degree that's true. But for our domestic operation, most of what we're really doing is product development, engineering, short runs, smaller cuttings. But a lot of the development that's going into the projects is really being done in our New Jersey factory, which enables us to execute well at the manufacturing site principally at our factories in China. So, yes, our domestic operation is a tremendous tool in helping to facilitate the process. The conversation that we're having about, the impact currently as it's taking place, I think there's interestingly and amazingly, there's been very little loss of ability to execute and move forward with the things that we're doing, because we have the systems in place to do so. But I think that the human factor of people not being together is really one of the most challenging aspects, because even though we've got Microsoft Teams and we use Zoom and we're in continual communication, I mean, I'm on the telephone more now and on different conference calls now more than ever before, right? So we're connected with each other, but I think that there's still an ability for people to feel disconnected from each other just by virtue of the fact that they're not physically together. And the psychological impact of that, I think, is probably, is impactful. There's an impact to that.
Right. And I do wonder if we're feeling that psychological impact a little bit more presciently because we're just such social people to begin with. Margaret.
I'm a basket case, Glenn. I'm perfectly honest with you. I'm ready to be committed. I've officially gone mental. And
committed to bringing back hospitality, I think.
But the thing is, what I realized is that all my teams, because we all work remotely, we have clients all over the world. We don't hop on a plane every time that they want to have a meeting. So we're all pretty well versed in this. Right. What I discovered is that for me, being isolated from my team, I'm doing all the dirty work now. I'm chasing the money. I'm making sure we've got the projects in. It's getting down, it's getting dirty. And what I realize is I miss the artistic energy of the studio. I miss all of the activity that's going on, all the noise, the dogs, the people, the problems. So what I started doing is I do a Monday roundup call every Monday. And then every other week we have a happy hour, which I know everybody does, as they should. But it's that Monday roundup that's really important for me and for my teams. Right.
So, Gus, how are you approaching this change? Because we can only do this remote stuff so far, as both Larry and Margaret were saying. So how are things changing with you? How are you collaborating with your clients these days? What is fundamentally changing? Let me add a little bit more to that. What do you think is temporary and what do you think is permanent?
Oh, that's a good question. So like Margaret, we do projects around the world. So we're set up to work remotely anyway. Everything that we do is up on the cloud. Our software is there. So actually everybody going back into their homes doesn't affect the work part, but just like what they're saying, you know, a big part of what we do now is having our team continue to be inspired. There's a big cloud over this whole situation right now. So I think it's really important to keep spirits up, and everybody's kind of looking at that future with some uncertainty. So it's a big, important part to talk about the positives, you know, and not to lie about it. You know, we've got to address serious problems going forward. And, but you got to do it with some positivity. You know, things are going to come back, no question.
Right. Things are definitely come back, but they will be coming back and change. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to take a deep look at the systems that we've had in place over the last decade or so, and the opportunities that perhaps technology is bringing us in the future, plus the arrival of all sorts of new products that are going to be coming into the market that might help you do your jobs a little bit better, both in the design and the procurement phase, as well as the products at the end user as well. Larry, I want to go to you, but Margaret is nodding so vehemently. I need to hear a comment from her.
Go to Margaret.
Yeah.
You know, I was on the phone with someone who's been in our industry a long time today, and we were talking about that he's partnering up with someone who has worked in the healthcare industry in certifying clean hospitals. And I said a couple of weeks ago, I said, listen, we were getting calls from healthcare providers saying, we want our healthcare facilities to feel more like hotels. We want you to come in and take a look. I think that what's going to happen, it's going to pivot back again. I think that what will happen is the healthcare industry will really put an imprint on what we're doing in hospitality. Now, that's not to say that we're all going to walk into a hospital or a clinic and stay overnight, but there has been extensive research, not only in healthcare, but also in food preservation and food supply, that we'll have bigger, wider conversations that we probably never thought that we would have before. Not just can you move people through social distancing? I think that we're going to have to touch every part and parcel of the property. And I'm excited about it. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that we're going to have broader conversations. We have to have wider views, and a lot more will come into play. So while this is a horrendous event, I think that some exciting innovation will come out of it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And sometimes when something is so horrible and the depth of it seems so deep and insurmountable, you can't really see clearly at the time that it is a chance for opportunity. It is a chance for change. It is a chance to reinvent yourself. Larry, you're probably thinking about this because the design process is going to be changing, right? There are obviously going to be some material changes in it. The development, procurement, and production is all going to be impacted in different ways. What are some of the things that you're thinking about initially to try to make sure that things can keep moving along as smoothly as possible, considering the changes in circumstances that suddenly occurred to you?
That's a simple question, Glenn. So,
yeah, you got 3 seconds. Go.
Okay. Well, I think that first of all, in order to be able to move forward with whatever changes are going to take place, you have to have a system and process in place for what has been taking place. So, you know, most of what we're doing, there's a lot of complexity to what we're doing, but the problems that come up frequently come from the simplest issues, the most basic problems that reoccur. And so you really need to have the systems in place from all of your process management in order to be able to make sure that, you know, the train doesn't go off the track. Okay. Having said that, I think that, you know, there's a lot of unknowns. I don't have that crystal ball. I think that our interaction with design and procurement from the materials that they wind up specifying and the feasibility of utilizing those types of different materials in the production of the product and different applications, different surfaces to deal with, different fabrics. Are they going to impact the way that a fabric and upholstery can be applied? Are the materials going to be, you know, less malleable to your hands to make a certain type of channeling in upholstery or something of that nature? So I think that there's a lot that has to be done where everybody really has to work together. And I think from the design partnership to procurement to manufacturing, I think that effort of working together and really understanding the problems and the needs and the different things that can be done to get around the potential issues is really that partnership is going to be more important than ever.
It sure is. And, Gus, you're kind of at the center of all of this, right? You're the one that has to deal with a lot of these changes that are happening. It's your job as the procurement pro to go out and get all of these products, to source all of these products. What are you dealing with right now that really addresses some of the issues that Larry is experiencing?
Well, I want to correct you on that because Margaret's going to come up with all the ideas. She's going to ask me, and then I'm going to tell Larry, you got to go find all that stuff.
I was going to cut in, but I thought Glenn is leading this thing, so I'm just going to until he calls on me. Until he calls on me.
All right, so we'll just delete that part.
No problem.
Don't worry about it.
No. But so honestly, in all that, there's a bit of a linear process and then it rebounds. So as design comes up with their ideas, and a lot's driven, and Margaret brought up the sanitation part. I have never had more conversations about sanitation in my life over these past 2 months.
Right.
And hygiene in hospitality has been a subject matter for a long time. This really puts it at the forefront.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very interesting not to overreact to this, because you can disinfect the world and have other consequences to that. So we have to be very concerned and think ahead beyond where we are as well. But in terms of implementing the designer's ideas, what happens is they come down to us, we do the research, and we're talking to vendor partners. And then it becomes a partnership going back up to design to make sure it gets implemented correctly. So it's a constant learning process and a collaborative process.
Yeah.
So, Margaret, are you finding that you're having to make some major changes based on supply chain issues, for example?
I think that we might. And I think that where it gets down to, first of all, a big part of who we do business with is people that we trust.
Right.
Those vendors, and we're a vendor too, at the top of the chain is the owner of the hotel. So we're a vendor, and it's dealing with our counterparts that we trust, that we know can provide what we need. And that's the baseline first. I think that where there's going to be a real shift is probably in textiles. And I think that it will become, listen, you don't want to overbuild. You don't want to build a church for Easter Sunday, but what you want to do is make sure that you are making your guests safe. And it's about creating that trust. So, I've been watching a group that called Material Connections. I don't know if you guys know them, but they are very science-based. They work with scientists all over the world to create materials that never even existed before. And I was watching one 2 weeks ago where they're actually trying to mimic the human skin. And it goes back to plastics that mimic the human skin, that break down, but it's for food packaging. And it's antimicrobial. A virus can't touch it. And I sat there going, now these are the conversations that we're going to have to start having, which is really quite interesting. We're going to have to mine. I always call it mining for gold, Glenn, that everyone digs around, they mine for gold, different places, different ways and everything else. And we're going to have to mine for gold so differently now, where Larry may have a substrate, but what we put on that could be very different from before. So, and how do you cut it? How do you mill it? How do you build it? How do you nail it? Not sure. So I think it's going to be a learning curve for all of us. And I find it exciting.
For the record, you just nailed that. Larry, how about how do you see it?
How do I see it? Well, I think that that again, this speaks to the partnership and the word trust, which I think that Margaret just really was touching upon. I think that working with trusted partners, first of all, that can give you a straight answer and that are going to be able to work together with you to solve whatever problems that you're trying to overcome is critical. And I think that, trust is something that really, if you stop and think about it, is something that really is developed over a period of really a career. So we're three veterans in this business having this conversation, and the trust that we have with our clients, with our suppliers, providers, with our team members, our employees, that's all something that we developed through being straight shooters and really interacting with them openly and transparently. So
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. All right, so we had a little technical issue. It looks like Margaret dropped off the line, but she will be back, I'm sure, pretty darn soon.
Okay.
But in the meantime, while we're waiting for her to pop up, and as soon as she does, we'll bring her right back into the room. Gus, what are you seeing in terms of material availability, pricing, and lead time right now? Have things fundamentally shifted, or are we still focused on, the tail end of what was going on prior to COVID?
Well, yeah, I think you hit it right there. So there's a delayed reaction to a lot of the effect that's going on. So right now we haven't seen really any delays other than what's normal in the whole FF+E process and shipping and importing. We all have concerns. Some of these are vendor specific. Some are more geopolitical. The concerns we had with China previously,
right,
still kind of tail in there with tariffs and all. So right now, everything's a bit up in the air. We do expect some pricing to go down because people are concerned about business. We expect to be some interruption in supply, and it's basically what Margaret and Larry talked about. We go now in an economic downturn, we go to trusted resources. We need to mitigate risk for our clients. And so we're not going to take those risks. We're going to need to know who to call in our vendors to make sure that they make the commitments that we need, because we're making them to the clients.
Excellent. So, following up on that, Margaret, I'm curious to you then, how do you assess really the long-term stability of a manufacturer? Things are changing so quickly. Is it just you could trust them because they've been around for, for 80 plus years, such as Larry's company? How does that work for you?
Well, it's a combined conversation. I'll be talking to Gus. This is an absolute partnership where all the stakeholders are talking to one another constantly. Listen, I have some good ideas and I have some not so good ideas. I also have good suggestions and some not so good suggestions. The key is that I think that we've all been doing this for a long time. We know the players, we know the pitfalls. We all call Gus and say, okay, who's got a full production line right now? Who's got an open line? And we all have horror stories. And
right.
We all do. And my feeling is that we all take our turn in the penalty box, and it's how quickly you can get out. And that's the friends that you have in this business that helps you get out. And I think that as long as we're all communicating with one another and talking about who's really viable, then it's a winning combination for sure.
Yeah, and I'm finding that people are more open and honest than they've ever been before at this particular period of time, which is refreshing to me. Larry, how have you seen the same thing? And what types of conversations are you having out there with some of the folks about their long-term viability and stability?
Well, I think in general, you really have to think about the background of a company that you're working with. Not just how long they've been in business, but what their company culture is. Who are they surrounded by? Do they have a management team? What's their process orientation? What's the conversation about their supply chain? I think that established relationships need to be there on every level. So, and this goes for any product that is being procured. The relationship that their supplier has with their factory is most critical. And in the marketplace that existed before, where it was a go-go market, everything was heated up, there was a lot of activity. There were a lot of suppliers in the supply chain that were shopping projects, placing their business where it was convenient based upon price, based upon timing, that, to get something done quickly, etc. And I think that now more than ever, those types of things have to be guarded against, because the opportunity for failure from a supply standpoint at this point in time is real. Okay. So I think that vetting your supplier and knowing who they are as human beings, as people, the people that you're dealing with, who are you really dealing with? Who is that person on the other end of the phone? Right. Can you access them? Are they accessible? I mean, that is absolutely of the utmost importance today.
Really great points from both of you. So, Gus, I got to ask you, if somebody is having trouble and they may not be able to meet the deadlines, how do you handle that? You don't want to just throw them to the wolves, right? You want to try to be a good partner to them too. But then again, you got clients breathing down your neck that may need something immediately. How do you negotiate that sticky territory?
Well, so we follow particular guidelines, and again, in mitigating risk. Obviously, being preemptive is the safest way to go. That
Right.
you can do your due diligence up front and only award to viable companies. Obviously, that's hard to do in this time because things change so quickly. A big part of this is negotiating terms and agreements. It's hard to get accurate information in terms of financials, but we try to do that. We run Dun and Bradstreet reports, Lyons reports, and then we negotiate different types of terms and agreements for deposits. It's normal in our industry to give deposits for custom materials. So in this kind of environment, we're going to reduce that. And then we're going to require milestone confirmations. When there are supplies and materials that come in, we need to have visual confirmation of that, prototypes being done, confirmation of production going on, and then the payments go in stages just to mitigate the risk. You can't eliminate risk. And that's the part that's hard for clients to understand. So even if you did something where you didn't pay them, you run the risk of not getting that production and getting it to the hotel. So it's really a constant process in due diligence. And then for all of us, there's so much experience that we have going in, and the human nature part and the intuitiveness, it's hard to put that on paper, but it's very, very important as you establish trust in this industry.
Well, and yeah, so it sounds like, Margaret, how do you balance risk versus trust? You may have known somebody for decades. You may trust somebody for decades, but this is such an oddball situation that's so different than anything any human being has experienced on this planet. How do you make the right balance to make sure that you don't put yourself in a deleterious position, but still have trust and respect?
Well, listen, everyone that I do business with and my clients know as well, I always tell them, listen, there's work that we turn down because I'll never promise clients something that I can't deliver. That's just the kiss of death. Mm-hmm. And everyone that I know, listen, not only could I be delusional, I could also be naive, but I've never had an experience where a vendor that I've known for a very, very long time, and these are well established, has promised something to me that they haven't been able to deliver. Now, I may think I know it all, but then I'm going to turn to Gus and I'm going to say to him, this vendor is telling me that they can do it. And Gus will say, I've dug deeper and it all looks beautiful on the surface, but it's pretty ugly underneath that hood. So you got to trust the experts. And that's why when you deal with a great purchasing agent, they know far better than we do what that supply chain is and what it needs to be. Also the financial risks, so it's really got to be a great team that you're working with.
So Gus, I guess a big question is, does Margaret know it all?
I think she does, yeah.
I hope my husband's listening right now.
Excellent. So, this has got me thinking that we probably need to make sure we have more systems in place to make sure an organization is able to effectively meet the needs of designers and purchasers and, of course, the end user there. Larry, have you started to change some of the systems in place to make sure that you're doing your part on your end to make sure that there's no issues going forward?
We haven't made any changes. I think we're leaning on the systems more than ever. So, when we receive a project, whether it's a model room order or a production order, we start off with a kickoff meeting. We sit down and we review with the team the design specifications that have been provided. A quotation has already been done. It's now moving live into operations. And we sit down as a team with our project manager, our director of project management, our design director, and principal of the company. We look through all the different specifics that are going into the product. Then we have a kickoff meeting with procurement, where we have a conversation with procurement, and we'll basically ask them who do they want to be in the loop as far as conversation. Do we want the design firm in at that point? Usually yes, okay. But our client at that point is really the purchasing agent. Purchasing agent will bring the design firm in, and then we'll have a meeting together to discuss all the ins and outs and potential issues that could exist with what has been specified, what we might be concerned about as far as stability, what we might be concerned about durability as far as the surfaces or the other materials being used and things of that nature. So I think putting those things in place and having those conversations openly are very important, which, there's no ego involved in that conversation. That conversation is really to make sure that we resolve a problem before a problem exists as much as possible. Because as you know, every project that's being done at the level that we're talking about is essentially, it's a custom product. Right. It's never been built before. It's in the designer's mind's eye, what they want, what sensibility they want to bring to that room, to that product distinctively, okay? So there's no second chance. So you need to really have a conversation with everybody that's involved, and then you need to stay in dialogue, in communication as the process continues to make sure that you're staying on track and that, what you thought wasn't an obstacle sometimes is an obstacle and vice versa. And then you have to work together to come up with the best solution that's still going to keep the design integrity intact, meet the budget for the client of what you're bringing, to the table through your quotation and what they need to have, and the feasibility of installation in the room, which is a whole other aspect that, needs to be considered. So, working together again in communication is critical.
Right. That makes absolute sense. So, Gus, I got to ask you, have you been utilizing this time to reassess or conversely reaffirm all the systems that you have in place to make sure that jobs go as smoothly as possible, even though there's a higher percent of unexpected challenges that might pop up?
Well, timing is everything in this. So it just so happens that we've been building a proprietary software for the past 3 years. We launched it at the end of last year. It's affectionately called Kira. And this has allowed us a chance to really polish it up.
Great.
This is a web browser. It invites vendors to bid. It has a collaboration between vendor and interior designer within its own ecosystem that shares shop drawings and approvals, and also it auto notifies each of the parties to streamline that. So yes, we are taking this time to really take a look at sharpening up systems, getting reports, establishing all these logs to streamline the process. I just want to comment on Larry's side of things that, what he's explaining here and the three of us is this really strong collaborative process. It's not a linear process where specs go to the purchasing agent, right. Purchasing agent sends the information to the vendor. To have the best outcome for our clients, which makes everybody look good, it's this process of constant communication, back and forth, honesty, transparency, a discussion. We depend on the manufacturer to say they can build a commercially viable product. And the designers depend on this as they become creative. It has to get implemented. These are custom. And we look forward to this kind of process to get a really good outcome for our clients.
So it sounds to me that you've been really working on improving the specifying and bidding process with new systems in place. But it doesn't seem like it's a wholesale revolution of doing things. Margaret, it seems to me that it's more of the next 3 meters in front of you, right? Getting 1% better and constantly focusing on getting 1% better. What are some of the recent changes that you might have seen in specifying and bidding that you like that have been improved? And if there's anything else that you'd like to see get tweaked moving forward, what would that be?
I think that, most of the purchasing agents in the business have systems in place so that we can be feeding information, just like clients have a project platform to use. I think that for us, design is still the same. The conversation will be different about what design is and what the criteria is. We're still going to be doing what it is that we do. We still want to be present. Being there is really important, but I think the conversation will change. It'll still be about great work, but where does that great work come from? I think what might happen too is that, Gus, you said something interesting that you think prices will come down. I think prices will go up. You know, when I think about,
I think they're going to stay the same. Haha.
you do. Okay.
No, I
I'll
don't. I have
place
no
a
idea.
bet, friend. Here's why I say that. Okay. So everyone wants to go LEED certified. Everyone wants to do a green building until they see what it costs. I did a project up in Stowe, Vermont, of all places, for God's sakes. It started out as a LEED certified building. 6 months afterwards, everyone's like, LEED who, LEED what? No one wants to do it. I think that with technology that's going to have to back up some of these products, there is, you know, an R&D element to it, and it's going to be more expensive. That's what I see coming down the pike until the usual suspects know how to hone their machines and create the same things. We might have to get them elsewhere than the usual suspects. And I'm not talking case goods, because wipeable surfaces, we do that now. Don't you think, Larry? I mean, we got that covered. I think it's going to be in the textiles, airborne materials, things like that that are going to be really important. Flooring. So that's sort of how I see it. Our conversations within the studio will be different, and suppliers could get super techy and really quite interesting, actually.
Well, it sounds like you're going to have to do a real educational process there to keep abreast of all the changes that are happening, because not only do you have to be able to know what that products are, but in some sense, you have to be an expert in all of those categories in order to be able to relate them to the ownership or the developers or whomever has hired you for a particular job.
Listen, they're looking to us for our expertise, and we can't walk in the room and say, we're waiting for Joe Schmo down the street to give us the technology of what we need to do. Also, too, you know, the operators, and I don't know if you guys have realized sort of the nomenclature that they use now. So I'm probably the oldest person on this phone call, but Glenn, I remember back in the day, operators used to be so prescriptive. They'd be like, use this, do that, put the fabric when it goes to Bill Marriott, put the drape in the upper left corner of the board, put the carpet in the lower right, blah, 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 blah. Now they advise. They just advise and they recommend. So the onus really falls on us. Now, Arnie Sorensen is saying that Marriott's got it covered. We totally understand that. But we have got to be as educated and as schooled as everybody else that we're sitting at the table with. Otherwise, you know, we don't bring as much value as we should. We're great designers. I also like to think that we're very smart people.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll say you are very smart people. Larry.
Thank you.
Yeah, Larry, you know, you're in a different position. You don't have to know absolutely everything, but it seems like you actually have to know absolutely everything, because when you're talking to people about projects, you need to bring that level of expertise that goes way beyond just your case goods category, for example.
Yes. You have to know everything, and you have to know what you don't know. Okay. Right. So I think that you can't assert an expertise about something that you don't have an expertise in, which relates to honesty in what you're doing, you know, with your client as well. So I think that, you know, as new materials become available, we're going to have to learn what the implication of those new materials are. Okay. But we're not going to say we understand this if we don't understand this. I think that type of conversation is of value all the time as well, because that's how we're going to be in dialogue, the three of us together, and we're going to talk about something that Margaret is specifying, because she's come up, she's interacted, and she knows of a material that she wants to use, and Gus is going to ask us to implement, and then we're going to have to dig in and say, okay, what implication does that have to the manufacturing process, and is that material going to be suitable for our production, etc. And you know, you can't just wing it, because the cost of winging it and doing it wrong is disaster. That's
right. And triple that for something custom such as your work a lot of times, right?
Absolutely.
So then, Margaret, let me just pivot back to you for a second in regards to this. You said things are going to be, it's all right.
It's okay. Don't worry.
We like that. That's one of the things. That's
we love dogs.
Quarantine is all about animals. You'd be surprised.
We all love dogs.
You'd be surprised how many times my cats kind of jump up here and appear. So
we even have dogs in the studio, so this is perfectly appropriate that I've got dogs in my house.
Exactly.
I love it. So you're saying things might get more expensive. That's a very real concern. How do you think that's going to affect your ability to create an aesthetic pleasing design. But if it's more expensive and profitability is lower, you may find yourself more constrained, which means you're probably going to have to dig deeper to get a lot more creative when it comes to problem solving.
Listen, there isn't a single project that I've ever met that doesn't have a budget.
Right.
You know,
you mean the budget that they say they're going to have, and then the budget that you actually get.
Yeah, well,
right?
oh yeah, we know that too. It's like, don't get your hopes up, guys. I'm constantly saying that. Don't get your hopes up. I think that what'll happen is that we're all going to realize, you have to remember too, that the clients, before that they go in, they're doing their due diligence on what a viable renovation or a build is. So they've worked out their budgets. They've worked with Gus. They've talked to him about what he thinks that this project is going to cost. And I think, I'm so sick of this term. I'll be perfectly honest with you, the new normal. I think we have to call it something else.
Agreed.
I think exciting times ahead would be a good one.
Yep.
Because I think that we're gonna have to move the needle, and it makes it different. It doesn't make it bad. So here's a very long answer to a super short question. I'm sorry, Glenn, but we're always having to be really resourceful. And you rob Peter to pay Paul. You can have this, but you can't have that. That's our typical day, for God's sakes.
Yep.
So it's not like this is going to change. It will. I think it'll be more interesting. It will be more challenging. But I think we're excited about the possibilities ahead.
And I, for one, feel badly for Peter because people are always stealing from him to give it to stuff to Paul. It's just a tragedy.
Paul's house.
So, Gus, let me ask you this. When it comes to the vendors out there, what do you think they could be doing better to meet clients' needs today and a year from now?
Your clients is for our clients or for me?
For you.
I have a simple answer for that. What I expect from vendors is honesty, transparency, don't BS me, and be collaborative, just like we talked about before. If you see something that doesn't work, talk about it, be timely with your answers and your bids. And that's what we ask for. So, being aware of the situation. I think when our industry gets very busy, it's hard to concentrate on projects. So we actually kind of look forward to a nice pace so that manufacturers can concentrate on particular jobs and it goes in a syncopated manner. It never happens that way, but we'd like it to. So we need our vendors just really to do the simple stuff. We don't need them to play designers. The best designers in the world are in the hotel industry anyway. So they don't need to play designer. They just need to react to what our team as a design team and a purchasing team need.
And Margaret, what about you? What do you think the vendor community could do a little bit better to support folks like you?
Listen, I think that they're doing a great job already. We're very, very blessed, especially in this industry, to have people who really, really care. That's the difference listen, my husband's an ex-Wall Street guy, and that's one business I know and probably not much else. But in our industry, we go for such long periods of time on a project, average 2 to 3 years on a project, that you really become very invested in the team that you work with. We're very, very lucky. And I have to tell a story, and Larry's going to get embarrassed or get mad at me. But the way I really know...
If we're lucky, both.
Yeah. The way I really know Larry is that he created this amazing video called No Assholes. And it is so brilliant. And he lives by that. And there's actually a documentary now. And apparently Cornell runs their whole administrative department and teaching department on the premise of and the practice of no assholes.
Wow.
And I have to say, Glenn, you're probably going to cut this out, but we're just going to have a little chat about it anyway. The key thing is that you want to work with people that are not assholes. And all of our vendors, all you have to do is be burned once. And we're all held up to the same standard. If you're only as good as your last job, you really are only as good as your last job. So you better make every job that you do count and at the level that you want it to be at. And that's why we partner up with people like Larry and people like Gus, because the winning formula is that there's experience, there's knowledge, there's honesty, and there's trust.
Yeah, you know what I want to do? I want to help out some of the younger folks out there. There are a lot of young people in this industry who have only been in the industry 10 years or less. That means that they've never experienced a downturn before. That means they need to probably change their way of thinking. Larry, maybe we could start with you. What advice would you have for them to being able to forge solid relationships now, and maybe some other things that they could be thinking about in order to make themselves better and more effective professionals as we enter something that's not called new normal at all? I don't want to get in trouble with Margaret.
Well, and thanks for the kudos on the no assholes, Margaret. But it's true, and as we say in that video, it only takes one asshole to asshole everything up. It only takes one in an organization. It's like the crack in the foundation that just gets bigger and bigger. So it's really critical, and it's a fun credo, but it's something that we live by, and it works. As far as young people in the industry, I think that the most important thing is to try to develop relationships with the right people. Okay, one by one, brick by brick. Find the real deal in whatever it is that you need to be doing, and don't be swayed by smoke and mirrors and a lot of pomp and circumstance. It's really the core values is what's going to get you through. That's what's gotten us through 85 years in business. I can tell you there have been good times, there have been bad times, and having employees that stood by our side because we stood by their side is key. Having suppliers that we stood by their side when they needed something, they stood by our side. Having clients that understood who we were and that we developed a trusted relationship with, that gave us the opportunity to prove ourselves through that relationship. So the most important thing is always coming down to the people. And for young people, in this disposable world, in this world where things happen with such speed, and everybody wants the instantaneous answer and the immediate gratification, I think that is the single most important thing that anybody can do, is try to develop relationships with good people.
That's good, and a good lesson. I've been trying to make relationships with jerks all these times. I knew I was doing something wrong. Gus, what about you? What advice would you give those same young folks that need some direction, that want to better their careers? How can they form great relationships and get ahead in the crazy career world at the same time?
Yeah, I think I've been through 5 or 6 of the downturns. So there's a lot of, so as soon as this downturn is over, it's opening your eyes and extending your vision out to, and this is not a bad thing. This is not being a downer. It's the way the economy works.
Right.
So pretend you're a surfer going out there. You're going to catch the wave. You're going to go in, but you got to work to paddle back out there again. Right. And look, you can enjoy those times to do that. So keep your spirits up, and do that. Go out and talk to people. Don't stop moving. Don't get despondent and wait for things to come back to you. Go change things now, and improve yourself, and take a class, whatever. But get out there. It's going to happen, and we're going to get through this, and it's going to be great afterwards. And there's going to be another recession sometime in the future. So,
yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that one, because it won't be anything like what we're dealing with right now. But the truth, Margaret, is that this is such a great time to reinvent ourselves as human beings. Take a good, honest look at the things that we really like about ourselves and the things that we could really change about ourselves that will lead us to create more close-knit relationships that will lead us to be better professionals, and I think it'll just lead us to be better human beings. What advice do you have?
There are a couple of weird things that I live by, and I was talking to my studio director in London last night. I said to her, take control or lose control.
Right.
And I think that what we have to do, another one of my things is, focus on those things that you can control, and those that you can't, you cannot worry about them because you can't affect them. I think this is a particularly unusual event. I just harken back to 08, like, whoa, this feels so much like 08. But layer on top of that there is a health concern to all of that. And
Right.
to me, I think that young people need to make sure, well, all of us do, quite honestly. It's what I've been doing constantly every day is we have to reach out to those people that we care about. It has nothing to do with getting a project. I don't like fair weather friends. Glenn, we only just
Right.
met, but you're learning a lot about me right now.
That's
fair
right.
weather friends they're not at the top of my list.
Yep.
And I remember in 2008 when, those people who stuck by me and I stuck by them and we're still together. You have to form those long-lasting bonding relationships to get through it. The other thing that I'm also seeing is that there's going to be a lot of turnover, and you look at what Hyatt just did. It's not just
and she's referring to 1,300 layoffs at the corporate level.
Yeah. And we're not just talking about young people.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about all of our peers, and it's about helping one another. And Alia Khan started it from Marriott. She posted on LinkedIn. Not sure where she copied it from. And then Paul Weiss did it. And then I copied it. I said, if I've ever worked with you before, if you ever need some help, please let me know and let me see what I can do. If we could all do that and show some humility and some empathy, I think it's really important. And Glenn, to your point, when you say people are nicer now, I certainly hope that what I do all the time.
Right.
This time I've just ratcheted up higher because I'm at home. I got more time on my hands and I'm sitting there focused. So I can reach out to people more than I did before. But I think the key is to, especially to young kids, I'll say this, is show humility and do whatever it takes to get the job done.
Right.
That's it.
I want to add, Margaret, I think that's spot on. And I want to add one other thing that I think is very important and missing a lot of times today, a little bit of patience for each other, patience, reasonable expectation and patience. The world that we live in is so fast. Email systems, telephones, text messages, etc. Everybody wants an answer immediately to the question. And sometimes it just takes a little time to breathe and think it through, or go home at the end of the day, have a night's sleep, and think about it to answer tomorrow. So I think patience is something that is an asset in the world today, and helps in relationships with people,
Yeah,
Really
I totally agree with everything you say. I just wish you would have said that a little bit quicker, because I'm waiting over here. Sorry.
Be patient, Glenn. Be patient.
Yeah. All right. So I'd love to end this conversation with some positive thoughts about the future, the opportunities that you see that are ahead of us, the chances that we have to all be more successful, both professionally and personally. Gus, maybe you could start us off with this, friend.
So, not industry related. I
good.
think it's amazing the power that we have as humans. In the past 2 months, because of a global collaboration, whether it's people have wanted to or not, we have cleaner air, cleaner water. This is the power of what we can do, because right after this challenge, we got other ones. There's climate change issues or whatever. So this shows that we can do something. We can do it all together, and combining all that stuff where we can be nice, compassionate, show some humility, and start working together as a globe, which I think we should do. We can actually make some great impact, and we can do it also in our industry as well.
Beautiful. I love it. Margaret?
Positive. I think that, we're hanging in and we're hanging on, and we'll get through this. And like Gus said, we've been through so much. You say 9/11, 08, everything else. We all know the roster. This too shall pass. What I bank on, and listen, I'm the biggest offender. My husband said to me like 3 weeks ago, he goes, I know you're already on a plane to China. I know you already booked it. I know you're already going. I don't want to live in fear. I want to be smart and I want to be cautious, but I don't want to live a fearful life. And I also think that I have the immunity of a horse because I hold the rail in the subway. I do everything I'm not supposed to. I walk barefoot in a hotel room. I do sleep under the coverlet. I do all of it.
Right.
But I think that we all have to move on. We have to care about those people that we love, that we work with, the planet, everything. We have to definitely, there is, Greta Thunberg is my hero, 16-year-old hero of mine. And the next thing that we go on to, and let's just hope that we all band together to cooperate and cure the next thing that we're confronted with.
Yep. My 16-year-old heroes are my twin sons because they get to sleep till 11 every day before I wake them up.
Are they identical?
Yeah. Well, my wife says yes. I say no. That's a whole thing for another video cast. We don't need to get into that mess. Larry, how about something positive from you, sir?
Well, I think that if you feel like you're not in a good place, the worst thing to do is to stand still. Mm-hmm. I think that, I always found that when times were tough, the worst feeling I had was when I felt like, what do I do about it? What's my next step? Mm-hmm. And the point is that you have to take a next step. Right. And if you take a next step and you keep moving, that helps you to overcome those adversities. And then stay true to who you are and surround yourself with people, the right people. And I think, that'll do it.
That's right. I mean, after all, the hospitality industry is potentially on the precipice of inexorable change. And you could choose whether or not to sit on the sidelines. You could choose whether or not to be really depressed, or you could choose to be the one that's going to jump in there and be positive, be the agent of change for yourself, for your career, for your company, for our entire business at all. Listen to what these great folks have said today. They're all using this as an opportunity to push their businesses forward, to reaffirm all the relationships that they have, and to make sure that the projects that they work on are done in ways that are going to be appealing, not just for today, but any of the future changes that are coming for tomorrow. Guys, I want to thank you so much for being here. It's been an incredible conversation. I know I learned a lot today, and I hope that you all did too, both here on the panel and at home. So I guess that's all thing we have to say is goodbye. So for Gus, Larry, Margaret, and myself, Glenn, I want to thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again next time. Happy learning out there, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Glenn, I
Thank
love you.
you.
You're the
Thank
best.
you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.